This morning we can, of course, do a little Q&A about Friday night, if you like, but as long as it leads us to what is narrative and what is not narrative, okay? If you agree. I think it would be interesting because, in my opinion, today, cinema, like economy, has spread in many little molecules, you know. Cinema used to be a one thing, you know, and then with sound and all the transformation, and now the fact that we have computers and small camera, so all those little molecules of, let's say, narrative or non-narrative film are exploding everywhere. So it's interesting to discuss about those expressions that, for me, even though my English is not rich enough to express what I feel, is a little bit of a cliche to say this is a non-narrative film, this is a narrative film, this is experimental. As I remember, a few years ago, I was interviewed by a journalist from the New York Times, and I felt so disarmed by certain words like narration and blah and things like that, that she said, well, I mean, or he said, I don't remember, I mean movie. And I understood very well what she or he meant by movie, you know? So I think it's nice if we can discuss a little bit Friday night. Of course, I will give you answers, but I'm ready to listen to you. If you want to start by question. No?
Yes.
You're not feel obliged, you're just...
No, I have lots of things to ask about Friday night. I thought it was, I don't want to know if it was a dream or reality.
Yeah.
It does not specify, and I'm happy without knowing that. But what I enjoyed in the movie is first the characters on the Volvo, which were dancing, and at a certain point she imagined probably that she fantasized about these characters dancing. And the second thing, this in the hotel, en route to the hotel when they went there was this little red shade which drifted onto the bulb, also magically. Yeah, I enjoyed these two things.
That's why I mentioned yesterday that the book was written in the first person, and when I logically or completely illogically decide that the voiceover will be a danger for the film, I kept all those little things she was describing. She suddenly realized that 16 volts there was not a plural, the S was not there, or she was realizing things like that. When you're stuck in a traffic jam, you have some parasite little thought coming, you know. Also when she imagined, what if she bring this man at the dinner, was she invited, you know, with the baby crying and things like that. But this was very clear in the book because she was thinking at the first person, the story, you know. Thinking for herself, huh? She was not expressing loudly. She was thinking for herself. For instance, when she sees the guy first time, she felt his look was going on the right direction, and she thought probably he had a meeting with this blonde woman because she was checking on her makeup and cliche thing, you know. Oh, certainly this kind of guy is going to with this kind of blonde, you know. So this was in the book from her thought. And when I decide, right or wrong, not to use a voiceover, it became a sort of parallel realism, you know, and then maybe the complete night is a dream, you know.
Also on the pizza, the ingredients.
The smile of the pizza, yeah, because she's so happy that he's back from the toilet that she thinks the pizza is smiling to her because this night is going to be really what she expects, you know. Of course, what I like in the novel is that this special night is the night of the last night she's alone. She's leaving her own apartment to live with someone. It's frightening. It's also frightening to pack and to move. And she made a mistake. Instead of maybe staying on her own and go to the cafe next door and have a glass of wine, she accepts this meeting, this dinner appointment, you know. And suddenly it's boring to her, you know. She would have preferred to stay on her mattress for the last night. That's what the book was about. The book was not a dream. It was something that happened in a space of time that was not exactly her time. Her timing was to have last night before moving in the boyfriend apartment, and suddenly she had this extra night out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but accidentally. And what is also in the book, and I think maybe in the film, is that in the book we don't know, after all, if she is going really to move in, or yes, probably, but she's not the same woman for sure, you know.
She really wanted to have to feel like she was alive.
Yeah.
It sort of made her like a relatable character, because she's just a woman who's, you know, having a life. She doesn't really, she's just walking, you know, in a gray space where everybody walks, but she sees this thing where it's like, makes her feel like light and happy for one
Yeah.
and it feels great. And who knows what happens in the future, but she doesn't have expectations.
And what I like in the novel, and I try to express in the film, was that she's not an extraordinary beauty. She's not meeting George Clooney. There's two real people meeting, and I mean, they're not ugly, but they're just normal people. Huh?
I thought the whole movie was like, when you read a book, between one chapter and another chapter, sometimes while publishing, there is an empty white space. White space. I thought prior to moving, vacating the apartment, and moving with a boyfriend, something happened. This between the two times, and something which is related to François, because we see two things about him. We see the message note, and we see the phone call in the phone booth. The other thing I thought was when she was kissing Jean and she removed one of her gloves, and it was something of her past was left there. At the same time, vis-a-vis the condoms that she bought, because both are worn. One she took off, and the other one she got with her there.
Mm. Yeah, it was an interesting book, and question of the narration, if we come back to that, was really that I really consider many, many times the voiceover as necessary, and when I surrendered to my thought of not using a voiceover was because I felt that with a voiceover, this is now entering, let's say, the subject of narration. Using a voiceover is, to me, and it's a question I propose to you, gives immediately a feeling that the story is told in the past. Because if someone can speak, who is this man? It's true, it could be in the present time, but yet, for some reason, it's also immediately expressed a sort of, as if you, by using the voiceover, even using the present time, you sort of are master of the narration, and as she's mastering the narration, then immediately I can think, even though it's in the present time, she sort of she will know before me the ending. I felt like that, you know. Very often a voiceover is used for that, using the past. So it's clear that the story is a memory or a souvenir. Okay. But then if you try with the present time, I find out that it was, so this thinking aloud was like a device that immediately alerted the audience that we were mastering the events, and that there would be no chance at all that something unexpected happened. Because we were like piloting a plane, piloting the narration. I don't know if I am right, huh? This is what I felt at that time.
It also makes me more aware of the medium itself. Like, Bertolt Brecht always used it in his theater plays to remind the audience that it was a play, that it wasn't actually happening.
Yeah, but that's why I came back to narration and non-narration, because I think as I go to theater or literature, let's go back to Homer, cinema is a sort of young medium, 115 years old, and it was invented by industrial as almost experimenting after the discovery of photography, experiencing what could be a shot, because what a shot is, it's a period of time. At that time it was 60 frames per second, now it's 24 frames per second. But anyway, it was the number of perforation and the wheel, it was exactly working like a clock. So not only it was movement, it was also time, huh? The invention of cinema. And of course image in movement in a certain duration. Okay. Therefore, I think the cinema, the way it was invented, as a not as an artistic means, almost a semi-industrial thing. As I say yesterday, it was like inventing a car, you know. It was something, using photograph to invent something else that became to be a sort of curiosity and entertainment. But still, the origin of it was not an artist who invented it, it was industrial, who had this kind of machine and who can figure out, okay, so already we can say if you can put a name, let's say it's come from the industrial world, but it was also experimental. Huh? Because there were, if it was not an artistic gesture at all. Huh? And I think when the first people who understand it could be different, but not only filming a train arriving in a station or a crowd walking out of the factory, which is very interesting, by the way, because in one case it's a train entering the station and it's a static shot, the camera is not moving, so it's a frightening shot. It's a shot that you might think the train is almost going to run on you, you know. And the gate of a factory opening for lunch break and all the workers going out was certainly, as opposed to the train, an image of reality, people going out of work. And even in that shot there is, I think, a little dog coming into the frame that was not expected, you know. And only after that, I'm speaking of Frères Lumière, other inventor in England and in America, but all inventors came from the industrial world, like from telephone, radio, and suddenly they were attracted by and wanted to use it to film their children, their family, their garden and the blooming of the rose in their garden, you know. Because they were industrial, they were not really of the working class, and they had houses made, blooming roses in their garden, you know. So I think when it becomes interested, it when some people decided to tell story about people that were not master of industry or were not the owner of the invention, but to narrate a story, really, you know. But still cinema was soundless. So it means that the narration had to be very expressive in editing and also in acting. But to be very expressive in editing when you're soundless, it's necessary to use ellipse, gap, as we say. Because if you're soundless and you want to describe every link, psychological link, you cannot. So of course then it was piece by piece, and the gap between piece was expressing, as you say, speaking of Friday night, as if the entire film was a gap between late Friday afternoon and early Saturday morning. Huh? I think silent movies were very much using those ellipses to create the energy of the narration. Huh? Then maybe it was not enough, and there was the written Right. But still it was silent movie, so each character had to express more in a way. But sometimes, because speechless, it's also very delicate, because it's also because of that filmmakers invent the close-up to express something that you don't have to clown with your body to express you running from the cops. A close-up was also an invention to express the soul or the feeling. Suddenly you can see someone very funny running in the street and sleeping on the banana peel. Suddenly, by a close-up, you express something of his soul, you know. So there the narration start to be more complex. Still, it's silent movie, huh? And I think the invention of the close-up was really of course, the speechless, emotional shot, huh? Still today.
And you used some of those devices from the earlier films, the iris going in on the...
Yeah, this came little by little when each director wanted to make a sort of invent more punctuation, and it's part of the narration, you know, to say, this is the end of the chapter, let's open to... But this is part of the narration, still in a speechless, wordless... Why I said that? It's because I think in a way when you read that silent movie were more artistic, it's a cliche sometimes, but it has something true. As if the dialogue were giving a sort of a sort, in my opinion, of laziness in narrate the story. But then the meeting with theater came. Until then there was absolutely no relation between the world of theater and because theater is not a new invention. It's old. It's belonged to history of man, you know, the representation of human condition is not a modern concept, huh? You agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
So Brecht is from the 20th century, but he inherited
Thousands of years.
of theater. That, in a way, when in Greece could be also as even more interfering with the audience than in Brecht theater, because the chorus was telling the audience what was going on and why this character was wrong or lying, you know. So Brecht was not the one to invent the distance between the plot and the audience. This was altogether part of the theater, even in front of the church in the Middle Age, when those mysteries were represented, like the death of Christ, or all these mysteries. You've heard about that, I'm sure. It was a sort of show, you know, but it was also for people who had no book, who could not read, because only monks had books, you know, to be related a sort of narration of how Christianity start, and what made Christianity different of the darkness of the world before Christ. You know what I mean? So I think all cinema was born, of course, with none of this heritage. Huh? You understand that? Then suddenly, either willing to express more, to narrate more, there, of course, the crossroad with theater obviously happened. Maybe because by the use of actors that were also at the origin more making their money on small stage or theater than in cinema, because cinema industry was not you cannot make really a living, a decent living, except you were making yourself the film, you know. Mostly comedian, even more than actors. And I think then when the sound appear in film, then of course the importance of the voice and everything, and what someone could say, dialogues, became, the relation with theater became more obvious, although when you meant in Brecht the distance, it breaks the distance of a voiceover, it's like the chorus in the Greek theater. Cinema was still a child of photography, therefore filming not a representation of reality, but reality, the real landscape, a real car. Maybe you could add some makeup on the face, maybe you could choose the clothes, maybe you could add a little light to make a face more beautiful, but still it was an image of reality, you know. So I think the dialogue in film, for me, became a way of narration that was not to give a distance, but on the exact opposite, to give you even more the effect of reality, I think. And then we can stop and I will stop my monologue and we will now discuss, but I think maybe that's where, in a way, there was to separate a cinema that was more attracted by comedians and stage representation, and cinema was more psychologically realist, and then was getting closer to literature in a way.
I think it's interesting how now with YouTube,
Sorry?
I think it's interesting how now with YouTube, it's almost like the revival to a certain extent of like the Nickelodeon or the small format pieces. You know what I mean? Like when
I know what you mean, but I try to consider your question because I think what I wanted to say. So let's say I go on a little bit more with my monologue. You have narration, and the question yesterday was, what is narrative film, and what is a non-narrative film? Now I would ask you also, what is an experimental film, and as opposed to what is a commercial film? Huh? But I think YouTube is, let's say you are like in science fiction in a way. Because when we are speaking of narration, we are still speaking of a media that day by day increases cost. Cinema became a success and an industrial success, and was suddenly creating wealth and a world, an industrial world. So it became something that suddenly narration was more or less submitted to a sort of commercial law, I think. That that's why Hollywood invented, in a way, the big budget film with the stars, and then the genre movie that were using less famous stars, reusing some sets, you know, like a sort of how to use the leftover, you know, not to lose a single piece of wood or a single actor or actress under contract. We can't use on big budget films, you know. It's a really industrial process, you know. Let's use and make money out of everything. Doesn't mean that people who were making film or writing script were not, a lot of them were great artists, you know. But the process of what is narrative and what is non-narrative now has to obey to certain rules because of the money, of the wealth it creates, you know. That's why I would not like to immediately put together YouTube as a little brother of Nicolas Odeon, you know, because I think the complete curve of industrialization made us now in YouTube. It's because it became really an industry, and Kodak, camera making, stage building, you know, storytelling, everything was part of that, you know. So I think that's where it's interesting. If you go back to silent movie, in a way, by editing one moment, one image to another image, you can judge after if it's very experimental or non-narrative, but it is narrative. Whatever you want. You might think this scene with a man and a woman in a room, and then suddenly cut to New York in a subway with... Why not? It may be like two... it could lead you to a story where 2 or 3 characters are related somewhere later in the story, you know? So I think the process of editing is narrative, in a way. Because it's edited in a certain order and in a certain time.
What was interesting with Friday night and the fact that you...
I just add one thing. Yeah. If I make, let's say, if I take an image of a small set in a desert near Hollywood, before there is even the Mayer brother or whatever, people making a film at this rhythm, the same rhythm, so you get this 16, 17 image frame per second regularly and everything. And there is a man in the desert alone, let's say, and a cop's kicking in the ass, let's say, anything like that. And you cut to someone in his room with his computer and in a conversation, in connection with YouTube. You could edit both image, and it will be maybe a flashback of the old time. It could be maybe almost a science fiction film if it was the guy within the black and white silent movie imagining that on YouTube you will see a guy kick in the ass. It could be like his future, the future of the world. You know what I mean? It's narrative also, in a way. Of course, I overemphasize the terms of narration, but it's good for you not to use too much the cliche of this is narrative, this is not narrative, this is an experimentation of... No. Keep it for yourself, because we know even in caves when you see animal painted on the wall that it's maybe narrating a hunt or fall coming and all the animal leaving the cold district. You know what I mean? So in a way, the narration, we are ready for that with image, but image, moving image with editing, of course.
Yeah, the only time...
No, let me go to a question.
The only thing I was going to say is, by removing the narration from Friday Night, her first-person perspective, we're sitting there, we're so used to being told what the main character is thinking. I'm thinking this, I'm going to do this. But the whole time we're watching her and we don't know exactly what she's thinking. There's a constant mystery that we're not necessarily used to, because in most, they're saying this is what I think of him or whatever. But this mystery, this fantasy, this lucidity, you're kind of stuck watching and wondering the entire time and not having this definitive outlook on what's supposed to be happening or what she is thinking. So you're kind of curious. It provides curiosity, I guess.
Yes. But imagine there would be an inner voice of her saying, this guy is not bad looking. Maybe he's losing a little bit his hair. Oh, I think he's going to meet this blonde girl. And I wish he could knock at my door, because since she heard the radio says, you should do... She feels guilty about the first guy, so she really wants to do it. But I don't think, in my opinion, I am really trying to give you my thought without any intention to convince you, because I thought this is not important to be convinced by me, because what I'm doing is I try, to make films. It's not, it's always trying something. It's not experimental though, but it's trying to narrate a story in a way. I think if I had her inner thought, maybe she would be more a mystery for me, because suddenly she would become a woman that can calculate every moment and not be just wishing secretly something happen. Because when I am driving my car, I have thoughts. Sometimes I can speak, say, oh shit, oh, hey, you fucker, come on, I can speak. Oh, I forgot this, oh, I wish I... But sometimes, no. Sometimes I'm just not even realizing I'm lost in my thoughts, you know. So let's imagine everything she thinks is pronounced in an inner thought. I don't think she will be less mysterious. I think she will be like so loud that she will be closed like a fortress, and maybe less moving, because there will be less space for us to understand. She's slightly shy with her body and her decision. She's not very sure of what she's doing is right or good for her or whatever, you know. So maybe we don't know, but maybe by knowing more, we will know less. I'm not sure I'm right. This is a bet, you know, because the other film with the voiceover does not exist. So maybe her, yeah?
I was just going to say that the label thing becomes more difficult when engaging with the industry of film as a whole. Like I'm not thinking about my work. Is it experimental? Is it narrative? And then when you have to apply to the festivals and ask you to check your box, you know.
What do you mean check your box?
So you don't have to apply to film festivals anymore. But when you apply to film festivals,
yes.
They ask you. They say you have to say what category
yes,
you want to enter into.
Yes, I understand.
And then it becomes difficult. Then because the industry
then
wants
you have to
push
lie.
you.
I tell you something. You have to lie because we should resist to this sort of labelization. Try to enter a festival by any means, even lying, you know. I'm experimental, non-narrative, studying the effect of this, but I mean, whatever, you know. Those sort of, it's like when you want to have a visa. When I entered the United States, it's written, have you ever dreamed of killing the President of the United States? Would you say, yes? No. Have you ever been a drug smuggler in the United States between Mexico? Yes. You know what I mean. You know this visa thing,
yes,
yeah? It's really so funny. That's the same for festivals.
Have you ever been involved in terrorist acts?
Yeah, sure. Of course, yes, I've been.
They have strong ideas on what it is to be narrative.
Don't you think FBI has no strong ideas about people who enter the state and who are, let's say, a little dark skinned and could be from, let's say, Egypt or, you know, country you know?
Yeah.
No, you have to. It's a game. It's a game. You find your way to enter. You don't have to obey that.
Yeah.
It's a joke. But they have to play like that, you know? Like me, when Wolfgang says, you can do this, you can do that, say yes, but what I do, because when I am with you, it's different. It's not when I'm emailing Wolfgang, I have a few faces, and you ask me questions, I want to answer. Sometimes I stop them talking. No, but I mean, you know, I try to be honest with you and to give you a little bit of my experience, not knowing if I'm right, you know. But if I was to apply a form, of course, I have to pretend I know what is narration. No, impossible, really. In fact, it's better to pretend something and do your path in the jungle, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one way or another.
Because narration is a sort of light shining. Your film is not narrative, so it's experimental. And the only question that is really important in narrative and not narrative is how to make it exist commercially. How to make it exist so other people see it.
Yeah.
That's the real question. Huh? But when I was speaking this morning about today with Jean-Luc at breakfast, and when I told him this little scandal in Cannes Festival last year, when the Thailandese film, Api Chapung film, Uncle Boni win the Palme, some people were ready to faint because he said, this guy, it's an experimental movie, it's non-narrative. But for the people who saw the film, honestly, I don't mean the people who didn't see the film or like in the market. You know what they do in the market? They go, they see 5 minutes in the middle. Oh, it's not narrative. You know, they don't sit and look at the film. For someone, you know, me and Jean-Luc, we don't like the same film at all. Very often we are contradictory. But for a different reason, we were speaking this morning, we had good reason to understand the film differently, but in a very narrative way. I was moved to tears at that when I saw the film. My father was dying, and I understood every single detail, although it's this uncle dying in Thailand with a different religion, a different culture, but everything I recognize in a way, you know, because it was dealing with seeing, maybe we don't never been in Thailand, but more or less we are built the same, huh? Maybe the taste of the food is slightly different. Maybe I'm not a Buddhist, but I understand the wish when someone you love is next to you and is about to die, the wish that there is another world after, that this is not the end, that something will happen after, something that maybe we don't know, but there is a space for the soul of that person, and that maybe also we can one day be in that world, you know? Not a religion, just a hope of not quitting brutally a body, a deathless body, and nothing is left. This I think you don't have from any country. You can understand that, you know, really easily. So when I was told, this is not narrative, this is, and I thought Tim Burton, who is a big star for a big company in Hollywood, is even helping renovating Walt Disney in a way, you know. But when he decided, opposed to many people, to give the prize to that film, because he said he had never seen a film like that, so narrative in a way, you know. I think he was completely right. He was completely right. Imagine it was not Tim Burton. It was some obscure French or Spanish director who was the director of the festival, you know. Was good, it was Tim Burton. Huh? Yeah. Because then the law of narration edicted by Hollywood was, in a way, had to agree.
Yeah.
Do you think people confuse storytelling and narration to be the same thing?
I don't know if it's the same thing. I think it's used as password in different ways. Storytelling is used more or less by journalists to I mean, storytelling is maybe Emily Bronte was using that. I don't mean, but now storytelling is used most on TV or in newspaper to express something that has to do with the political world, that people are so maybe fed up to deal with politics that they want to be told a story that will make them believe to get involved in politics is still interesting. So people who wants to be elected have hired people who are storytellers. They will sort of present the candidate in a sort of story, a magical story, you know. That's how storytelling is used more or less today. Huh? It's not only like when I was a child, we would say to my mother, can you read a story tonight for, you know? Or can you tell us a story? You know? That was storytelling. It's still the same. Still you have to tell story to little children. But storytelling, quote, storytelling is a sort of, in the media, is a sort of weapon to convince more easily people so that they believe they belong to a story themselves. When they vote, when they do this, when they do that, okay? Like the biggest storytelling maybe that influenced a lot of cinema, by the way, and literature, was the Cold War. The Cold War was a story we were told for a long time that we made film out of it, science fiction out of it, the alien, you know, things like that, you know. That's storytelling, you know, just to express a fear that was a little bit difficult to express because in fact it was the fight of two powers. And I think the ideal beneath was not as strong as it seemed, huh? Either in the communist world, either in the Occidental world, you know. The storytelling was the way to make us part of it, you know. Now, narration, I think for me, it's more used for film. Like, does it respond to the law of narration so that people will be interested every minute? They don't have to wait too long for an explanation, and the editing is not there to put in relation two ideas or two feelings, but to give a speedy reason, so there is no boring reaction. Huh? I think also for because of TV, we do not react the same today me included, to a long shot lasting 4 minutes, as to the same scene told by 12 or 13 angles of camera and by less than 3 seconds shots, you know? It tells the same thing but in a different way. But if you test that on TV, I think the 4-minute shot could be a danger for the TV channel because some people that are, you know, they want to move on. But if you are in a theater and you watch a film like a lot of new directors coming from Philippines or South Korea, or they have very strong filmmaking, but they still use sequence shot, huh? With no cut, no, sequence shot, solid sequence shot. In a theater, it's sometimes, it creates suspense, an attraction. It creates something stronger sometimes than 30 cuts, you know? So it's TV and film, it's not exactly the same, but it's very interesting to experience for you work, if you want, to experience the sequence shot. A sequence shot. Camera is slightly tracking or static completely, and you see, and it always create very strong relation between this shot and the spectator, and immediately a sort of narration, sort of crystallize slowly. But it works, you know. I'm not speaking again of my work. I'm speaking in terms of you. If you want to experiment, you have to try.
By sequence shot, you mean not?
I think you wanted to ask a question before.
Well, that's okay. You can ask.
No,
that.
no?
Okay. Well, I mean, it had to do with Friday night and whether or not you thought that movie was a storytelling of this woman's night, or if it was a narrative of this woman's night, for making a distinction between storytelling.
Excuse me, I have to understand exactly what you said.
Yeah. That Friday night, is it a story of this woman's night? 'Cause in a way
Yeah,
it
I
was.
understand. Or
Or a narrative of her internal journey, of her internal
so
change.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe also because in English I'm not so sure of myself, but maybe when I read the book, the novel that Emmanuel wrote, and we wrote the script together, I read a story of this woman during a night, As I finished the book, it was the story of this woman one night stand, you would say, in a very gross way. Making the film became a process of going through the night, which is, of course, in a book, it starts at dusk and finishes at dawn, but it's a book, you know, so it's a war. But when you make a film, the sky changed color. I mean, we were going shot by shot, sometime close up, sometime long shot, in a process of what is the time of a night. For instance, I take for instance the kiss scene. In the book, after she finds him in that coffee, and suddenly she has made up her mind, and she had this yes. So she sort of expects something. She sent a message to the man, so she's ready. Huh? But in the book, let's say the coffee, the way she was looking for the coffee was much longer than the coffee scene itself. And the kiss was a kiss, but she was losing her glove. She did not pay attention, and he put his hand in the one glove, and then there was a kiss. And when she left her head, she could read hotel. But this is like 4 lines, And me, I remember when we were scheduling the film, I said, let's have a night. Of course, it was a little bit ridiculous to have a night for the kiss, But I said, I don't know, maybe it's ridiculous, but let's have a night, we'll see. We'll see. Let's have a night, because I don't know how many shots I will do. I don't want them to kiss too often and to be, cinema kiss, it's not always funny. And I thought, let's stretch the time so I don't ask them to kiss a million times under different angle, but maybe to kiss once or twice, but solidly, So let's give me time for that, So they are, because of course they were a little bit afraid, because they carried the story in a way, and even though they knew each other, they were friends, suddenly they realized that because I was taking my time, step by step, the glove and everything, suddenly when the time of the kiss came, they were petrified, because they had thought that left the coffee, lost the glove, and kissed, and the actor said, why do we have a night for that kiss? You want to test us, you want with the tongue, without the tongue, it was like complaining. He said, no. Let's trust me, and the kiss was really at the end, So I think in that case it was more step-by-step narration of the kiss, that the story of the night. That night it was the kiss.
Can you also talk about the moment when he turns away from her in bed, and then she has the realization that she doesn't want to be there anymore, and she leaves. But there's that moment, when I was watching it, I was really surprised by his action and didn't quite understand what triggered it, or whether it was just the evolution of their...
There is something when they come back from the pizzeria, suddenly she has seen the clock, the time, and she knows she's not like him. He seemed to be free in time, and she is not. So in a way, on the way back to the pizzeria, she's not the same. When he wants to make love, she's not so... She's slightly afraid that the morning that the time is very slow at the beginning, and suddenly the time is going to be fast. And he felt that. So he understood. She was already calculating only 2 hours left, and he's a little bit offended by that, So that's what I feel. And she understands, so she tried to reach for his back, but she understands that if she reached for his back, it means that maybe then she has to forget about the time.
Yes.
So she doesn't do it.
So she goes back to her reality. And then she's also able to leave because
Yeah.
When you were talking about the narrative and the narration, I remembered when in Paris, Catherine Barma does her TV shows, the Tout le monde en parle thing. So, and she briefed it. She said, when you shoot 7 hours, and more importantly than the 7 hours to make them an hour and a half or 2, you do the editing, and insisted on the fact of the narrative and the editing. And the worst problems we faced was the applause of the audience. Because the moment the applause is not edited well, then we give the impression that we are cheating on the audience. That something was there, we cut it out, and it was the traces of the applause. So editing was very prominent in there. My question regarding this movie was, when there was this mass transit shot, the traffic in Paris, I had the feeling that inside the car, they were liberated. The windows were shut. Even if we saw the steam, extreme close-up of the steam in the car, that was the outside world. The inside world was completely free. And I had this feeling in the very beginning when she was drying her hair, blowing her hair in the chauffage thing in the car, parallel to the scene when she went to the balcony, extreme close-up to her hair, and it was also moving to the air. I just had the feeling that there was liberation in her car. Everybody outside was shot fine. She was not, he was not, Denis and Vincent. And there's this voice from the radio, which was annoying, kind of, because he kept saying, if you're going to the dinner, it will be cold, blah, blah, blah. But this urge to be charitable and kind of, and get people inside, that was also a cue for her. That was a cue. This outside voice, she got what she wanted, switched the radio off, and followed the order, and the movie went on.
I think I was bothered too. But on the other hand, because I used the radio of the time of 95, you know. Yeah, I agree with you. But there is something. I'm not speaking of TV because TV. Let's say we go back to TV because TV is interesting. The rhythm of TV, but let's go to this hair, the freedom in her hair and the wind in her hair at the end, and the way she runs and smile at the end. I think, and it's not, it's me, it's my relation to the film. The actress within the film is not an actress, is not a movie actress. She's a comedian, a very famous comedian, and because she's extremely funny and very successful, she has decided long time ago she is ugly, and that she would never be treated as a beautiful woman. And I know her for a long time. And she always makes jokes about her being not Catherine Deneuve or whatever. So when I start thinking about which woman I wanted her, really. And it was very hard for me to convince her because she said, but I look too ugly, and in a car, you will have always my close-up because it's small. So the only good thing I have is my legs. So how would you show my leg in a car, you know?
That's funny.
And I said, Valérie, you're so good-looking, you don't know how good-looking you are. You shut up. And also, she has very beautiful hair, very curly and a lot beautiful. But because she thinks she's not beautiful, she's always very strict with her hair. So everything I did was to blow something, you know. I don't know, I wanted her to be more free with her beauty, you know. And I think she realized in the end when she saw the film that we were invited in the New York Film Festival, and people told her she was very good looking, and she was so amazed. So I think I was influenced a lot by that.